All right, guys, quite honestly, one of the better decisions that I've made in life is to go ahead and invest in the truck that I want to drive and not just try to go halfway or, get something because it's cheap, but just make the investment. It improves my day-to-day life. You spend a lot of time in your vehicle driving back and forth to work, running errands, whatever it is. And when you are in a truck that you actually feel good about driving, that's fun to drive, that you are passionate about, it makes an impact on your mood throughout the day. At least it does for me, man. Maybe y'all can't relate to that, but for me personally, it does. And that's why I want to tell you about my buddy Jonah Bunch at Bunch's Diesel Performance. They are the premier shop that's going to help you guys get in the truck that you want to be driving, that you're going to be proud of, that's going to be what you want it to be, all right? Jonah can take you all the way from the first step to the very end of having your dream truck. He can and will. All you have to do is tell him, this is the truck that I want, the year, make, and model. He has access to used vehicles and vehicles that you don't have access to that he can purchase from. He will find the truck for you. He will make the purchase, and he will build that truck out for you as in-depth as you want it to be built out so that this is turnkey. You call Bunch's Diesel Performance, tell them what you want, tell them what your budget is. They find it, buy it, build it, and deliver it straight to you all the way through. It don't get no better than that, man. It just don't get no better than that. So I want you guys to check them out if you're in the market for a new truck. By the way, I would highly recommend, if you want a diesel truck, getting a older diesel truck. Instead of spending over $100,000 on a new one, you can drive a lot cooler truck if you go through this process with Jonah for less money. All right, so think about that. Another great thing about working with Bunch's Diesel Performance is I know Jonah personally. He is a honest, hardworking, awesome human being. All right, I've done a lot of cool stuff with him, and he is someone that I'm willing to recommend here on the podcast, that I am confident that you can trust him, that he's going to work with you, that he's not going to beat you out of anything or do any shady business as you guys go through this awesome process. He's going to make it fun and exciting, and you will not regret it. I can guarantee you that much. So we'll attach a link to Bunch's Diesel Performance in the show notes of this episode. You guys give Jonah a call, have a conversation with him, see what he can do for you. That's not the only thing he offers. You can go as deep or as small as you want to go with him and his team. Check them out. Hey guys, BPN is a long-term partner with us here at 3 of 7 Project. That's Bear Performance Nutrition. And the reason that I am so in love with BPN and the products that they make is because they dominate the endurance space specifically. And endurance athletes have needed a company like BPN for a long time to come out with a lineup of fuel sources to help us go further, faster in our endurance efforts. For me, that's particularly ultra running. And the G1M Sport is their flagship endurance hydration formula. This has been much needed over the course of the years. I've been ultra running since 2018, and I have used pretty much everything out there on the market as a supplement for my fueling in my hydration. All right. And this is what I have landed on, is the G1M Sport. This has everything that you need in it. Calories, carbohydrates, it's got your calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, and the G1M Sport Plus also has some caffeine just to keep you locked in through those kind of late evening and nighttime hours if you're running a long distance race. Sits well with your stomach, it mixes well, and the flavor is outstanding, which are all important factors when you're looking for a nutritional supplement that you're going to add to your hydration during a long race. It's well thought through, and it's a great product. Another great product they have for endurance athletes and even just for every day is the Go Bar. This is the new flavor, the maple cinnamon. just good, clean fuel, tastes great, goes down easy, and sits well with your stomach also. It's a good light fuel source that you can take on in the middle of a run or in the heat or just as a snack throughout the day. I keep a stash of these in my truck just to grab and eat throughout the day if I happen to miss a meal or I'm late at work headed home. This is a great product to hit that spot. So BPN, thank you for the work that you put in to producing these nutrition products for us athletes to get out there in the field and to have a better experience and hopefully set some new PRs for ourselves. It's an amazing company with amazing people, and you guys can check them out at bearperformancenutrition.com. There will be a link in the description of this episode. And again, they are a long-term partner. They've come alongside us. They contribute to the show and are part of making all this happen. So one way that you guys can support us is to get your supplements and your fuel for all of your fitness endeavors from BPN. It helps a lot. All right, Sonny Scoggins, I never thought that I would be interviewing a midwife on the 3 of 7 podcast. Oh, how times have changed. So, people who have followed me for years and followed the podcast and listened to the podcast for years, they're probably all laughing right now because for years and years I advocated against having children. I was anti having children. For a lot of reasons, because I was selfish, but to be honest with you, the big reason that I have waited until I'm 38 years old to have my first child is because of fear. To be honest with you, it's because of fear. It's because I know, because of the job I used to do, how fragile life is. And I know when you have a child, you're entering into a situation where you don't have much control over how that child forms in the mother's womb. Oh, I had no idea how. I knew that the birthing process was let's call it a violent thing, but I had no idea what it actually was. And then just the life of this small infant, I have seen strong men die. Mm-hmm. I understand how fragile life is. That's a blessing and a curse, to be honest with you. But we're here today because you, Sonny, had a tremendous impact on me. You delivered my son. I got to see the way that you and your team operated. Mm-hmm. And it was extremely impactful. I can appreciate teams who operate at a high level. And what I saw that day was multiple teams of people who had come together to operate at an extremely high level and to lean on each other, to leverage different skill sets and talents and gifts in order to bring a human being into the world safely. It was impressive.
Yes.
So thank you for being here.
You're very welcome. Blessed I could be there.
I'm super pumped about this conversation, man. And for the listeners, this show isn't going to be all about the story of my son being born. Really, what I want to talk about today, we're going to start off by learning from Sonny just what a midwife is and how that's different, because most of my interactions through the process has been with a midwife and not with a doctor. And so I want to understand, what's the difference? What is a midwife? How do you get there? What's the path? What are the difficulties? What are the challenges? And then we're going to get into the conversation for you guys, listeners, and I think this will be applicable for you guys even if you're not having children, or maybe you've had children already a long time ago. We're going to talk about the big, scary medical system. We're going to talk about and get into the picture that's been painted about the hospital and how I was a person who had really bought into that narrative. Honestly, COVID changed a lot for a lot of people in terms of how they view healthcare professionals. It changed a lot. It changed a lot for me, and a lot of that's valid. But I was at a point in my life having this child where I saw the hospital as this kind of big corporation, which it is a business, but the people who make up the teams there, like the people who are there, I'm guilty of seeing them as just part of a business and not human beings who are invested in helping other people who are there for help.
Yes.
And my experience that I had with you guys changed my whole perspective on that. So we're going to get into that later in the conversation. I want to learn about you though first, Sonny.
Okay.
Where did this journey start for you, becoming a midwife?
So I always wanted to be actually a pediatrician my whole life. I went to college. I went to Mercer University for one semester, and I decided I'm an only child that I did not like being away from home. I thought I did. I wanted to get out of the country to go to the city, and I decided I didn't like the city. I also had started dating my husband at the time. We've now been married 21 years last week. So that also changed things because I had another reason to be closer to home. So I decided I wanted to be a nurse because more than anything in my life, I wanted to be a mother one day. So not that you could not be a physician or a doctor and be a mother. I just knew how hard it would be and how that would be a harder thing because they typically work longer hours, different hours. It's just harder. So I came back home and decided to go to nursing school. And then in nursing school, the first rotation through pediatrics, this little guy was leaving. I just wanted to take his IV out to send him home, and he pitched a fit. And I realized, okay, maybe pediatrics is not what I want to do. Maybe I like the babies that can't talk back and can't scream because I'm trying to do something to them. And then also in nursing school, I went through a rotation in labor and delivery, and I just fell in love. To me personally, that is one way that we can see God's creation. I mean, how he created a baby and a woman, and it can fit just perfectly to be a beautiful birth. Every birth I'm there for, I see that. So I just fell in love. Of course, I decided to continue my education with my bachelor's degree, and then I decided to become a midwife. Kind of through our own infertility journey. I was at the doctor for an appointment, and they said, "Hey, we're looking for help in the office." And I said, "Well, I've been thinking about going back to school." And that's how it happened. And then when I came home from orientation for school for my master's program, I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, who's now 18. So that's all just tied together. So I've been a midwife now. Let's see, August will be 16 years. So.
Wow. How many children have you had the opportunity to deliver over the course of 16 years?
Hold on, I have a list. I haven't looked at it. I forgot to look that part up. Let's see. Nine hundred 919.
Oh my gosh.
That I have written down. I'm sure I missed a few here and there. So.
Wow. You got to have so many stories.
I do.
919 human beings brought into the world. That's impressive. Thank you. So let's talk about now midwife. Help us understand what is the role the midwife serves and how is it different from the doctor? I guess when we say doctor, we would mean OBGYN. They're the doctors that are there in labor and delivery, right?
Correct.
And so my experience, there was a doctor there when we were there, I guess on call. Correct. And then you were there as the midwife. And what's the difference between the two?
So the doctor obviously has had more training, also has had surgical experience. So they're always the top level, like they're the backup for us midwives. But as a midwife, there's really three paths you can take. One is a certified nurse midwife. So you have to be an RN, a registered nurse before, and then you go to a accredited place to get your master's, and then to become a certified nurse midwife. That was the path I took. You can also just be a certified midwife, which I'm not that familiar since that's not the path I took, but I believe you do not have to have a nursing degree, but you do have to have a training at an accredited school. So it's kind of the same thing. And so we are all licensed. Then you can also just have a midwife, or some call it a lay midwife, where they do like an apprenticeship with another midwife. That's going to be more for your home birth type situations. Kind of they learn from each other. There's no regulation there, so that can sometimes be a little daunting. But yeah, so those are the three paths. And then, so as far as the doctor relationship, so when I'm on call, I'm usually taking care of the uncomplicated pregnant women. We can take care of some complications such as preeclampsia, gestational diabetes, things like that. But we always have a backup physician so that if something goes wrong, we can call them. Or we determine, we've pushed for 2 hours and this baby's not going to come out this way, then they're there to do a cesarean. So we work very well together. At our group, we have 5 OBGYNs and then 2 nurse midwives. So it's not always the same person. So that's what's also amazing about the team aspect. You also have your labor and delivery nurses that could vary. So the fact that the team works so well together, it's pretty impressive because it's not always that exact same team every time. Same with the NICU team. They have different people working different times. So it's cool to see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So essentially, I guess in redneck, for my redneck understanding, basically the midwife trained the way that you've been trained and the path that you've taken, you can essentially do everything other than surgery.
Correct.
Essentially. Yeah. For simple terms, because I saw you do some really cool stuff. I mean, you can sew people up. You can do some pretty invasive maneuvers and funny story. I'm asking you this question because of my own ignorance, because when you came into our room, and again, I know HIPAA and all this stuff, so if hopefully I can say what I want to say.
You can say what you want to say. It was your experience.
Funny experience. When you came into our room, the first time I ever saw you, you come in and I forget if the nurse introduced you or you introduced yourself to me and my wife, and we'll say it was you. You said, "I'm Sonny. I'm the midwife. I'm here to deliver your son, unless you want the doctor." Somebody said, "Unless you want the doctor instead." I'm asking you this question because when you come in as the midwife, we had no understanding of what the difference was between the midwife and the doctor. We had heard great things about the doctor who was on call that night. And so my wife said, no, let's have the doctor in here. And I loved your reaction. You were like, you kind of laughed about it. And it was perfect. It was the perfect reaction because it was, in a way, because of our ignorance, it was a slight to you because we didn't understand what you were capable of as a midwife. So we're thinking, no, we just want the top dude in there. You know what I mean? Because that's the safest possible scenario. But you handled it so beautifully. And then Brooke told me I have to give a shout out to our nurses, Heather, both Brandy's, and Sarah, who was with us through the first 2 nights there. But Heather came in and had a talk with us and explained to us, hey, you might want to reconsider your decision for these specific reasons. It seems like you guys as midwives are, I guess, in some scenarios and in some environments a little more flexible and willing to work with the mom. And that was the real, I think, deciding factor of why we changed our decision and said, no, we actually want Sonny in here with us instead of the doctor.
Yes.
And so that was just a really cool interaction the first time that we actually got to meet. And you handled that beautifully, by the way.
Thank you. I always want to give, because I know that the doctor had been with you guys for a little while. So technically the way it works is I would do a delivery if I was on. But I always give people the opportunity because I preferred a certain doctor when I was having my babies. So it used to hurt my feelings when people would say, no, I'd rather have the doctor, or no, I don't want to see her. And now I'm like, I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but you can't please everyone. So
yeah,
that's just the way I look at it. So even if you had stuck with that, it still would not have hurt my feelings whatsoever. So
yeah, I could tell. You what is the history of midwives? Was because this profession has a long history, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I didn't look up that. Okay.
Yeah, you don't, and yeah, you don't have to look it up. But I mean, did you guys learn anything about the? Because this goes way back to prior to hospitals, and living out here where we live. Mm-hmm. I mean, you think even just 60, 70 years ago, there wasn't access and facilities to hospitals. And so all of the births and deliveries were being done, at least by my understanding, by midwives.
Yes. I mean, there were even midwives in the Bible. So I think that's cool that my job's listed in the Bible. But I think that was all, your mom was a midwife, so you learned that skill and you took that on. I know that midwifery, like actual nurse midwifery and like regulated, came from England, and it came over to Kentucky. Hyde in Kentucky, it's in the middle of nowhere. If you get there, you probably can't get back out because GPS doesn't work. But that's actually the school that I went to. It's called Frontier Nursing University. And that is kind of where they first brought nurse midwives over, and they would go out on horseback to the homes and see the women for visits and stuff. And then it just kind of grew from there to become a little bit more regulated because of, you never know, if someone hasn't had all the training or they haven't seen this actual thing that went wrong, how do they know how to deal with it? So that's kind of, they wanted to make it safer.
Yeah. I want to understand too, just about the actual job that you do. And I want to ask you, how do you deal with the bad outcomes? I mean, because I know, like, do you have a challenging day or a challenging story that you can share with us?
I mean, my most challenging, of course, no names can be said, but patient came in and she was full term and her baby did not have a heartbeat. We thought it did for a second because there's something called an internal lead you can put on the baby if you can't get the heartbeat. But it's really strange because I've seen this happen several times. If you do that and the baby's not alive anymore, it will pick up mom's heartbeat for a short time. So for a split second, I thought, oh, we do have a heartbeat. It's just really low. We need to get to the operating room, get this baby out, see what we can do. But it turns out baby was not. But mom was complete, so we just pushed and had a baby. And they did CPR for probably 40 minutes, and baby did not survive. But that dad, we were all crying in the room because that dad literally just stopped us all and prayed for God to take the baby, which he already had. But it was just, that was a life-changing experience. So that, I would say that's the hardest day of my career.
So, yeah, I mean, how do you continue on after that? Like, what have been your tools? What has been the thing that you've leaned on? Because I'm asking this question because when my son was born, got pretty wild there for a minute.
Mhm.
And I got to have a glimpse of what it would be like if this went bad. Like, I thought for a minute that maybe he wasn't going to survive this. And I felt that weight of like, oh my gosh, this might be our story. And I still don't know how I would have moved on from that. And you guys are going into these rooms and you're seeing stuff, tragic things happen, but then you may have to walk out of that room and go right into another room and do it again. And I don't understand how you guys do it.
I mean, I do it with the help of the Lord is how I do it, with prayer. And I never want that same thing to happen again. So I also want to learn if mistakes were made. It's not always mistakes were made. Sometimes things just happen. But if there's ever something that could be improved to prevent that from happening again to someone else, that's how I look at it, is I have to keep going. I've also never quit anything in my life. I'm not a quitter. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I guess I'm just a little stubborn in that aspect, but it's hard. It's really hard. I mean, I don't want to say my heart's hardened, but at times you do kind of have to like compartmentalize a little bit, as I'm sure you experienced when, from what you did in the past too. So it's, I don't really know. I don't have an exact answer of this is exactly what I do, but you have to keep going.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great answer. And I think it's an answer that everyone can apply when you just take quitting off the table and you say, no, this is what I've been called to do. I'm going to lean on the Lord to help me through these difficult things that I don't understand why they happen. And I'm going to make the choice to keep going because I can continue to learn and improve and maybe in the future prevent a bad outcome from happening again.
Right.
And that was another question that I wanted to ask you is when you are actually in there walking through this labor with a mother and delivering this child, you're walking a really fine line between potentially letting it go on for too long and, taking the, I guess, the surgical route and getting this baby out. And so what are you looking for as you're walking that line between, nope, this is an emergency versus we can let this keep going for a little longer to see if we can have a natural birth? Because that seemed like a really thin line that you guys have to walk, especially when the mom's desire is to have a natural birth. Because that's another thing I saw in you guys. All of you genuinely wanted my wife to have the experience that she wanted to have. Right. And that's a fine line.
I always want to give the patient what they want, but at the same time, I try to remind people, like, especially if it's your first baby, you've never done this before. So let's, you have some expectations, but also let's be realistic. The pain with childbirth is real. I mean, people go into, they don't want to get an epidural, which is fine and good. I support whatever you would like to do. But I think a lot of women, that pain hits and they're like, okay, I've never felt this before. So I do like for people to have a little bit of an open mind just because we don't know what to expect. But we have several things we look at. We look at obviously vital signs of mom, blood pressure, temperature, heartbeat. And then for the medical aspect, we look at the fetal heart monitor and then the contractions. So usually for me, if the baby looks happy on the monitor, I'm willing to give it a little more time, be a little bit more lenient, be a little bit more, what does mom want? What does she prefer? Versus if the baby starts looking kind of like, hey, I'm running out of my oxygen reserves here, whether that be the cord around the neck, whether that be placenta's kind of not wanting to work, whether we're just contracting too much and we don't have enough time in between to get our oxygen back up, then I'm a little bit more like, we got to do some stuff. We got to turn. We've got to do oxygen. We've got to cut the Pitocin off, or eventually we may end up in the C-section. All of our ultimate goal, is mom and baby both to leave the hospital healthy. I had a dad one time tell me, he say, "Hey, look, my goal is for my wife and my child to live." I was like, "Great, that's my goal too." But sometimes the knowledge that we have are the things that we can see. As a patient, you don't see it, you don't understand it. So I just think having open conversations is a good thing.
Yeah. I want to talk for just a minute about you mentioned the Pitocin, and that was something that we were able to utilize in our situation. My wife's water had broken, but she had not went into labor. And so labor needed to start because the water was broken and there was a risk for a potential infection. Labor needed to start.
Right.
And so we were able to leverage that medication in order to start the labor process. But the Pitocin is one of the things I think that has been and is highly demonized by the Instagram and the YouTube, TikTok, yeah, all this stuff. Can you help us understand that drug a little bit, why we utilize it, what it's doing, what the benefits and the risks are of that?
So it is a synthetic version of oxytocin, which women have naturally. That is naturally what puts women in labor. It's what causes the contractions. Also, it's in like breastfeeding, it helps the mother bond as well. So it's a multi-use hormone, but Pitocin is used. So what it does when we give it is through the IV, but it helps your contractions either become more often or stronger. Sometimes some women are still contracting like every 2 to 3 minutes, but it's not strong enough to cause their cervix to dilate. So then we kind of have that option. Some people think that we just use it just because, hey, we want to hurry up and get this over with. I cannot say that there's not some people that do that, but for the most part, we do not do that. And it just helps make the contractions more efficient, I guess you could say. My rule of thumb is usually if we get the Pitocin going and we get to contracting well, and we're making some cervical change, we don't have to just keep going up on the dosage. And then I have some women that even like want to do natural delivery, and then we still need to start Pitocin, and I just get it going until they start contracting, and then we can even turn it off. But it's kind of like going from 0 to 60 typically. Mm-hmm. Those contractions kind of, they hurt a little bit, then we put Pitocin on and they can get pretty intense. So that's never our goal, but it depends on what's going on in the situation. So definitely water being broken for a prolonged time can be because of that infection risk. Also, if we need to induce anyone's labor, let's say preeclampsia or high blood pressure or gestational diabetes or any reason that's a medical reason, then sometimes we use that. But the side effects, so really the biggest side effect is it can make you contract too much. When you contract too much, it's kind of like if your baby was, I think like a balloon, and you just keep squeezing so quickly, then its oxygen reserves run out, which can then make your baby's heart rate go down because your baby's like, hey, something's wrong. I need help. So it's not that it directly affects baby. It's more that it affects the uterus and contractions, which then affect baby. I have heard that it was a derivative of like cocaine or an opiate. That is absolutely not true. It is a man-made synthetic form of that hormone, oxytocin.
Gotcha. I think one of the big things I see around this too, and one of the big fears that we had when we were going in to this was that using Pitocin significantly increases the chances of having to have a cesarean, a C-section. In your experience, have you seen that correlation or?
No, not if it's used in a safe way. What does slightly increase your risk is the fact that you're on the monitor. So if we see your baby react, we're going to react to that, versus if you're at home, you have no idea what your baby's doing. Your baby heart rate could be going down at home and you don't know. So just the fact that you're on continuous monitoring does increase it slightly because of that. But at the same time, it is what is the safest if we're giving you a medication to cause contractions. So I have not seen that. I've not seen that in my practice.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I mean, delivering over 900 children, I think you're qualified to make that statement. So, yeah, just trying to dispel some of the big scary things that we were kind of confronted with moving into this in our ignorance is really good. And I hope it's helpful to some of you guys who are going through this process or planning to have children. I want to get into the conversation and really talk about the hospital. And I want to talk about this, one, because I prefaced it earlier talking about how the hospital seems like this big, scary machine to people like me, especially rednecks who don't trust the government. Where I think rednecks who don't trust the government are now lumped into the crunchy crowd. I don't know. But to people like me, it seems like this big, scary corporation. And I think what that is causing is it's causing a lot of mothers and families to choose to do home births. And man, if that is, you ought to have the right to choose that if you want to choose that. And this is in no means is this conversation meant to put down anyone who chooses to do a home birth. I don't want to sound like I'm going that route. But the reason that we chose to go to the hospital, even though we are kind of untrusting, well, because of our ignorance, after having the experience, realizing it was our ignorance, the reason that we chose to is because I don't understand how you are willing to assume added risk on behalf of your child. I just wasn't willing to do that. I wasn't willing to stay at home and assume this extra risk in the event of an emergency. And this is a huge, violent thing the woman's about to go through. I wasn't willing to accept that risk so that we could be at home and it just feel more natural for us. And I'm wondering, first of all, your perspective on this. Because you're a midwife, you could, if you wanted to, you could start your own business and do all home births, I assume. But
I would have to have a covering physician in the state of Georgia to require that.
But you've decided to be a part of this team, this magnificent team. You've decided to be at the hospital, and this is where you've decided to leverage your talents and your gifts and your skills. And so what's your perspective on the home birth versus the hospital birth? Have you thought about that, weighed that in your mind?
Yes, definitely. I'm thankful that people do have an option and can choose that. I personally wouldn't choose that, nor would I deliver at home either, because I have seen things go so smoothly, and then boom, no, it's not smooth anymore. Now we have an emergency. And what you have to think about with obstetrics is you have two patients, before baby's born and even after baby's born, you have two patients to deal with. So in the event that mom's bleeding too much, hemorrhaging, baby needs help, it depends on the home birth situation. Sometimes there's only one person there that is trained. And how well are they trained? I don't know. Hopefully you looked through that and checked them out. But what's going to happen? Who's going to not get care because the other one needed care? It's kind of my thing. Also, it's a huge liability issue, as you can tell, as you would think, because something happens, you're the only one there. That I don't know how you could walk away from. But that's just what I've chosen. And I think that I feel like it's best. Again, end goal, mom and baby, healthy, leave happy. I know the hospital's not comfortable. I do. Every time you get to sleep, somebody comes in and wants to prick the baby's heel or check mom's blood pressure, or they're bringing a tray of food that you really don't want to eat anyway. So I know it's not comfortable, but like you said, I feel like it's worth it to have those resources available just in case. And it may not be immediate. It may not be right at delivery. It may be a day later. It may be 2 days later. But you're just there to be on the safe side. So I don't, discord anyone for choosing that. I just don't. I personally don't support it. That's all.
What are the critical things that we have access to at the hospital that we would not have access to at home?
So from mom's perspective, blood, a blood transfusion. The uterine artery is super, I didn't look this up either. Some things you learn in school and you kind of forget. A ton of blood is pumped through mom's uterine artery every minute. So when you're talking about something to do with the uterus right after delivery, we're talking about massive blood loss.
Arterial bleed.
Yes, and a very quick. Essentially, the uterine artery is pumping as much as the aorta. So you just got a ton of blood loss that can happen very quickly. So if needed, blood. Also, there are some devices that can be used to help with that. And then ultimately, surgery. They can go in surgically, tie things off, tie that artery off, whatever it may be. And then as far as baby, just, oxygen, ventilators, this is all, hopefully your baby doesn't need it. And I hope, I wish no babies needed it, but they do sometimes. Medication to help develop their lungs if they are premature. Just extra hands too. It's really hard to do all those things with just one person. So the team aspect, you're doing this, it kind of just really helps having extra hands.
Yeah, I got to experience that. And again, my experience just transitioned my entire view on this whole subject. And I got to experience exactly what you're talking about, Sonny. When my son was born, I all of a sudden realized for the first time exactly what you just said. There are now 2 patients here, and both of them need help.
Right.
Like, I didn't think about that.
And how did you even feel torn as a husband and a father in that role? That you were torn in that role even. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do.
Right.
I didn't know what to do. But I saw this, again, going back to this team, and I want to talk about that team there. Like, who is in the room? In our experience, I saw multiple teams, and there was like an established chain of command in there. It was almost like the doc was the platoon commander. He was like the lieutenant. You were like the platoon chief. You had your nurse team who were like your E6s, like your pipe hitters, your managers, your workers, you know what I mean? And then you had the special forces unit standing by with all these toolboxes, and like they were like you just went right into action. You made this quick decision, handed off to the special forces unit, and they just go boom right into action. Yes. So talk to me about those. I'm talking about it in military terms, but talk to me about the different teams and the aspects that are going on in this room to make sure we do everything that we can do to preserve these now 2 lives that are potentially at risk. Again, life is fragile. I have been told by someone, and with good intentions, that, if your child would have been born at home, it would have been fine. The hospital makes everything look like an emergency. Okay? I think here's the problem. I don't think there's very many people who are aware of what an emergency even is, to be honest with you.
Right.
I think they're living life they're living in this false reality where they do not understand the fragility of life, human life. They don't get it. I've seen strong men die in a second.
Right.
Strong men. So talk to me about the team that we had available.
So typically it's going to be your delivering provider, whether that be a midwife or if there's not a midwife on, because there's not always, the OBGYN. And then you have your nurse, the nurse that is the patient's nurse assigned to this patient. Typically there's a few other nurses that float in. It depends on how busy we are. It's been just me and the nurse before, and that's it. We also have 2 scrub techs usually on the floor that are there. Their main thing is if there's a C-section, they scrub in for that. But they also go into deliveries, help. Some of them have been there longer than I've been there. So that's kind of the delivery team. And then if I'm the delivering provider, I also have an OBGYN that is backing me. They may or may not be in the room. Typically, they're not in the room unless I need them. So that's kind of that team. And then the NICU team, we definitely do not always need the NICU team, but when we do, we're very thankful for them. Usually there's a nurse practitioner. They keep a nurse practitioner in-house 24/7. So there's a nurse practitioner, there's a respiratory therapist, mainly just helping the breathing aspect. And then there's a NICU nurse. If we have 2 NICU doctors that are there, if it's the middle of the night, they may not be there. Only if the nurse practitioner called them in. But if it's during the day, they might also be there. And then, of course, if there's more help needed, if things are, then they can pull more people in.
And that NICU team is what I was, in my mind, I view them as like this tier 1 asset that's there to take care of baby in the event of an emergency. So they're not always needed, but that is an asset that we have available in the hospital. And it seemed like their strength was really controlling chaos and working on a really time-sensitive problem. Yes. Describe to me that team and what you've seen them do. Is my perspective right on them?
Yes. Well, if you have a baby that's not doing so well, the quicker we can get everything back up to, what you would call baseline at least, the quicker baby's going to do well. I mean, lifelong things like, if your baby went 10 minutes without breathing, without any resuscitation, they may survive, but they may not have the ability they would have had they had help immediately. But they're well trained in that. Honestly, they're a little separate from us. I mean, we're so very thankful for them, but I also would not want to do their job either.
I wouldn't either.
That's why when I deliver a baby, I'm like, here, if we're not doing well here, I need somebody else to help with this part. So I think that it's just that they work well together. And they have high risk babies in the back that they are taking care of. Sometimes they may be full, so they're having to kind of pull people out when they come for a delivery. So they come routinely to certain deliveries, so like high-risk deliveries for different issues, high blood pressure. If we've noticed that baby hasn't looked great on the strip, but we are close enough to have a vaginal delivery and not need to just go back for a cesarean, then they come for that just in case. They may not even touch the baby, but they're there just in case.
It's an amazing resource.
And not every hospital has that. So not every hospital has a NICU. We are very fortunate here in Rome to have Atrium Health to have the NICU team that we do. So that's not the case in every hospital. So if anyone's listening, thinking about that, make sure you check out the NICU where you're planning to deliver, because that would be important to know.
That's a good word. I want you to talk to me, Sonny, about just you guys' mindset there at the hospital. And again, this is just to hopefully kind of clear up some of the myths that we hear about kind of what you guys said, or what you kind of briefly touched on it earlier. Like all you guys are interested in is getting patients in there, getting the baby out, and getting the room empty so another person can get in. right? That's all you guys are interested in, which you're putting moms at risk because of that, because you're rushing things. You don't care about the mom's wishes and how she wants to have the baby and the outcome that she wants. You're just simply interested in the numbers, getting people in and out. Talk to me about the real mindset that you guys have as a team there at the hospital, and how you guys are treating patients, what you're looking for, and just hopefully to dispel those myths, because that was not my experience with you guys. My experience was you guys wanted us to have the experience that we wanted to have within the boundaries of safe baby, safe mom.
Yes. And that's pretty much it. We want you to have the experience you want, but within safety. So at any time it's no longer safe, I'm going to say, and I need to work on in that moment when it's really intense, maybe being able to vocalize some things more, but your brain just kicks in. It's fight or flight at that point. But I feel like the majority of the nurses, doctors, all the support staff at the hospital, definitely, I'll be honest, I don't care about the numbers. The corporate may care about the numbers, but those of us there on the front line, we don't care about the numbers. We want to, whatever we have in front of us, we want to take care of that patient. Now, I will tell you that lately we've been really busy. So sometimes that can be draining when you're working a shift and you never get to even eat lunch or breakfast or whatever, a 12-hour shift, and it can be hard. But as far as trying to just get you in and out, no. Now we do know that we want you to have it. We don't want you to be in labor for 3 or 4 days either, because that's not good for you, and that's not what you want either. So, we try to do it. There's a couple of things that I'm pretty picky. I'm pretty insistent on. The biggest thing is having an IV access. That's always been a rule, and then now lately patients can't have. It's become a thing on TikTok and all that you can refuse things. You can refuse anything you want. You don't have to. Nothing has to be done to you, but you're there for safety. You've chosen to deliver at the hospital for safety. If you want to be safe under my care, I need to have a way to save your life. And an IV is what I'm going to need. That's going to help with anything. I had one patient that declined it. I came on like mid, I guess, labor, and she'd already declined it with a prior provider. And I was like, I don't like this. So I went in and talked to her, and she's like, no, I don't want it. And I was like, okay. She hemorrhaged, needed blood, couldn't get an IV. It took a while. Things could have gotten really rough because of that. And I said, then I'm not going to do it again. I didn't want to do it then without an IV, but again, just trying to explain to the patients why. It's not because I just want to stick you. I want to be mean. And I don't even want to hook you up to the cords, just a simple IV, not hooked to anything, just so we can save your life.
So you're actually experiencing the shift in the way people are viewing you guys.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm not off base here.
We get told they don't want Pitocin because it's a derivative of cocaine. That was been the wildest thing, because I don't understand how that could ever, there's no truth to that whatsoever. But yes, a lot of people come in, they kind of with a chip on their shoulder, like, I don't want you to tell me what to do. I don't really want to tell you what to do either. I'm bossy enough at home and other places. I don't really need to tell you what to do, but I do know from experience what works, and what works the best. I'm willing to try it your way as long as you're safe and baby's safe. But when that becomes an issue, then we're going to have another discussion about why. Why did you want it that way? Like what? And a lot of times it's a lie they've believed.
I'm so glad that you talked about that, and the IV thing particularly. That was another thing that we were also hearing, like, why do you need an IV? If you don't need it, why do you need it? But it's like, what you're saying is what you're saying is is not going to get clicks right now. And that's the problem, because it's not controversial. What you're saying is, hey, let's get ahead of all of the potential life-ending problems.
Yes.
Like, I'm not doing things, you're not choosing to do things that, you're not trying to get ahead of things that don't really matter.
Right.
You're trying to get ahead of things that, like, hey, if there's a high likelihood of this happening, and if it happens, it is going to potentially kill you. Let's get ahead of that.
Yes. I would really like to prevent that, because I really don't want that happening.
So what's going on? Why have we lost the common sense that you're talking about right now? Like, why is this shift happening in your opinion?
I truly don't know. I can speculate somewhat.
We do a lot of that on the podcast.
Okay. So I can speculate that we all, our bodies are on, the government, the powers that be, the medical, they just want to push things on us. No, we don't. If you don't show up, we might get to go to the restroom on our, during our office hours. If you don't show up for your appointment, I'm not going to make you do anything. But it's just, I think it's just a shift, and I don't know why. I don't know the true reason why, besides now we can choose to believe whatever we want to. And what used to be doesn't always have to still be, I can identify as whatever I would like to identify as. And I think it's just that whole mind shift change.
How much do you think social media plays into it?
Oh, absolutely. Because when a patient tells me something that I'm like, what? I'm like, where did you see that? They're like, TikTok. I'm like, okay. Was it an OBGYN? Was it it was a girl that had this experience. I'm like, and I hate that she had that experience, but also, I don't know about you, but when I go somewhere traveling, I'm not going to review where I stay unless I've had a bad experience, because I expect it to be a good experience. So a lot of times what we're seeing on TikTok, YouTube, whatever social media, are the bad things. Because if you have a good, healthy, normal birth and nothing's different, there's no drama involved, you're not telling your story to everyone. So I think sometimes what we hear and what people hear on social media are the bad things. So then fear kicks in. And bad things can happen. I wish it didn't, but it does. And so that can be a true thing, but I think that's important to talk to your provider about before delivery, because sometimes, you're in delivery, there's a lot of things going on. People in and out of the room, that's really not the time to discuss, this is kind of how I want things to go. The time to discuss that is several prenatal visits back. So.
Yeah. I think it's a huge factor. I think social media may be the biggest factor. At least that's my opinion. One, because I'm a product of it in a certain sense. Like I'm self-aware enough of how it is affecting my perspective. Also, everything that you see on social media, like you said, a lot of what you're going to see on there are bad experiences. You gave a great example of that. You're not going to leave a review unless you had a bad experience. Mm-hmm. But also, when you post something on social media, if you want it to do well, you're going to have to dramatize it.
Yes.
Like, that's just the reality. If that's what you're trying to do, you want to get, maybe it's just because you want to get the word out about your experience and you wanted to get in front of the most people. You're more than likely not going to tell the whole story, either intentionally or unintentionally. Maybe you're just going to tell the parts that you remember and that stood out to you, and it's not the whole picture.
Right. Because I guarantee just the experience with your delivery, you and I have different memories. Just anything. You go to an amusement park, two different people are going to have different experiences. I've had patients tell me before that they almost died in their previous delivery, And I was the delivery. I was like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. It was great. It went great. And so I think sometimes we just, we believe what we experience and our perspective. And that's not always, accurate. I mean, it's what you experience, but you didn't see the whole picture, I guess I should say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I hope I'm not over dramatizing my experience, because I do feel like my son was near to death. I mean, am I wrong about that? Because I want to know, because as I share, I haven't talked about that whole thing to the audience yet, because to be honest with you, I don't know that I could tell the whole story without crying. It was that traumatic to me. Am I over dramatizing that?
No, I can't say any more than that because of HIPAA, but no, you're not.
Wow. Okay. Well, that hits.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I just had to process that for a minute.
Sorry.
No, that's I've been wondering about that. My like, because I don't want to be that person when I do get to share that story. Like, I don't want to be that person telling a story that might be is the way I remember the experience, but might not necessarily be true. So I think that's good for me to hear.
But they're both doing great, right?
They are.
They're doing great.
They are. They're both doing awesome, for sure.
I was kind of hoping he would be here today.
Yeah. Yeah, he's at home with Nanny, so yeah, he's got good lungs.
Okay.
He can't cry. And that's one of the crazy things, I guess the crazy good things about that experience is when he is crying, like squalling with me at 2 a.m, I am thankful for it, because I would have given every dollar in my bank account, and I have lots of dollars. I would have given every one to have heard that cry when he came out.
Yes.
I am not kidding. I would have been willing to completely restart my life from that point forward to have heard that cry in that moment. I didn't have that option.
Yeah. Well, you didn't offer that either. I'm just kidding.
It would have been no questions asked.
Isn't it amazing, though, how I'm sure during the pregnancy you felt you loved the baby, but until that moment, till you saw him, and maybe even until you got to hold him, how that love is just there. It's just like,
it's miraculous.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And just to think that, God loves us even more than that. I can't even fathom that.
No, I can't either. It is absolutely miraculous. And the Almighty has a strange way for me in my life, Sonny, of showing me what he's going to give me, but then taking it from me, like for just a minute, and letting me realize what it would be like without what he's about to give me. Yeah. I have that story multiple times in my life, with my SEAL career, with my wife, with this situation with Solomon. I'm thankful for it, but I don't really appreciate it in the moment.
Yes.
Another topic I want to cover here today that I think is a huge obstacle for a lot of people, especially young families, is the cost, being financial cost of having a child at the hospital instead versus having a child at home. And I wonder if that isn't a factor for some families choosing to have a home birth versus go to the hospital and have all these resources and have this awesome team around you, and being able to mitigate that risk. I'm wondering if that isn't a factor for some people. Why is it so expensive? So for me, I'll give you the numbers. It cost us a little over $18,000 to have our son there at the hospital. And apparently it would have been much higher had there been an emergency and there would have had to been a C-section, which again, me personally, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. I would have given you $1 million. I don't care. But for some people, maybe that is a factor when they're thinking about that. Why is it so expensive?
I don't know. You know, we definitely, as the providers, do not make that decision. That is up to the corporation. I don't know the exact numbers, but a couple of years ago, like the provider, the actual doctor, made maybe $300 to $500 a delivery. Maybe that's what payment was. I could be wrong on that, but it's pretty close. So the rest of that is coming from the hospital, the facility. I don't know why healthcare in general costs as much as it does. I do know, you know, as pregnancy Medicaid, the parameters are much higher than typical Medicaid. So I know a lot more people that is available if it's a financial issue. And most of our patients have either, I call it commercial, private insurance or pregnancy Medicaid. So usually the cost is not a ton. Now, I will say I've had private insurance both of my pregnancies. My daughter that's 18 cost $25. My son that's 8 cost about $6,500. So that's with medical insurance. So I know that can be a cost, but I also believe that for home births, now I've not checked into this, but they also charge a substantial amount to attend a home birth. I have no idea what that cost is. So if you have insurance, I think it would be at least comparable to self-paying a home birth versus a hospital birth.
Okay.
Now, self-pay is different. Sometimes, though, I think it's better to be self-pay than to have insurance lately.
I've thought a lot about this when I first saw the numbers of what it costs to have our child there. I thought, wow, that's expensive, $18,000. Okay, but you know what? I thought about it, and I thought, hold on a minute. I had an entire team of people surrounding me to protect the most valuable things in my life, and the collective time, if you calculated everyone in the room when my son was delivered, the collective time that those people have spent going to school and learning how to do their jobs would have been decades. Mm-hmm. There was decades of experience and education and sacrifice in that room. So that's just the people. And I thought, holy smokes. Okay. Now I'm looking at that, and then I'm looking at, look at this facility that I have access to. Completely clean, everything set up, literally hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment in each room.
Right.
All at my disposal. And then going on from there, getting to spend 2 nights and having professionals come in, do all the checks, having an amazing nurse, Sarah, come in and spend time with us and teach us. And I'm like, hold on a minute. $18,000 is cheap. That is not, like, look at what I just had access to. Like, what a blessing that we here in America can be surrounded by professionals with literally decades of experience in a facility where if a storm hits, it don't matter if it knocks the power out, because we're still going to have power there, where it's clean, where we have everything that we need to do to attack every possible scenario that we can anticipate, and then to have that care even for a day or two afterwards for me to learn and be comfortable and be safe before I go home. Sonny, I got all that for 18 grand?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
I guess.
I got all that for 18 grand?
That is a good way to look at it. Definitely.
Like when I started to think about this, I was like, holy smokes. Do you know what I get paid to go and speak for an hour? $30,000. I got all that.
Yeah,
for half of what I get paid to speak for an hour.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess that's another thing. The experience that I had with you guys has even completely changed my perspective on the cost part of it. Because in the past, Sonny, I would hear these stories of like, oh, it costs $20,000 to have a baby. How ridiculous is that? How ridiculous is that? And I would go right along with that. But now I'm like, no, that's ignorance. That's stupid thinking.
Yeah. Especially when you compare us to countries where, it is free, but it's out in the bush and, it's not clean. Yeah. Maternal mortality rate, when you look at back in the day before, when there was a lot of people delivered at home, for the most part, it was much higher. Moms died. And it's just, again, goes back to, is it worth it? Is it worth that risk to, but yeah, you look at it different, because I get mad when I have medical bills. I'll be honest. I get mad. I'm in the medical field, and then I'm just like, why should it be this much? But that's a good way.
That's the way I'm seeing it. I mean, I'm so overwhelmed with gratitude toward everybody there, like completely overwhelmed with gratitude, which was such a big reason that I was so thankful to be able to talk to you today. And I want to hit a statistic that I saw, and get your opinion on this, because this is what you do. I did see that the United States has the highest infant death rate of basically all first world countries. And again, I'm asking you your perspective on this, because there's a documentary out there called The Business of Birth. And it's all the anti-hospital. It's all the stuff we've been talking about today. They demonize the nurses. They demonize the medicines. They demonize the hospital, everything. But this is the main statistic that they build the foundation of their case off of, is the United States has the highest infant death rate of all first world countries. I think it's 5.5 infants per 1,000 is the most recent statistic that I saw. It's pretty astronomically higher. And they are blaming it on the hospital. They're blaming that death rate on the hospital. They're blaming it on the Pitocin. They're blaming it on the rushing. They're blaming it on all this stuff. I mean, obviously we've shared our perspective here on the hospital, but why do you think that infant death rate is so high? Have you thought about that? Have you seen that statistic before or heard that?
I don't know the exact numbers that I've heard before, but here's my thoughts on it. Most Americans are not healthy. Okay. It has a lot to do with what we eat, what's in all kinds of stuff that we take in. And women are having children later in life, which we know typically has a little bit higher risk. The biggest risk with that is the older you get, the more likely you may develop high blood pressure or diabetes, especially if you don't live a healthy lifestyle. Now, I'm not the one to preach about healthy lifestyles, okay, because I like to eat. But I think that has a lot to do with it, because we have higher risk pregnancies. We are seeing older women, more comorbidities is what we call it, other issues, and it leads to more preterm babies, which we know that preterm babies have a higher risk of not surviving. And I think that's just really what it's down to. Some drug use also is mixed in with that too. Fentanyl, is a big thing. And sometimes you have babies that don't do well. Mom's going to labor early. Their placentas can actually rupture with certain drugs, and so that also leads into that. But that's what I think. I can't say that it's the hospital's fault, because I feel like the hospital's where we try to save them and try to, prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
So that's my perspective. But
Did you know hospitals were started by Christians?
no, I guess I didn't know.
Yeah, they were. Hospitals were started by Christian people wanting to provide a space to mitigate risk and to save lives. Yeah. Something to think about. Yeah, I think that's the common sense answer to why the United States has the highest infant death rate out of all first world countries. I think that's the common sense answer. But it's so easy to take that statistic and to demonize you guys and what you're doing, what you've been called to do, what you're dedicating your life to do. It's so easy to take that stat and demonize you guys.
Right.
But I think the common sense answer is look around you. Look how unhealthy we are as a nation. And think about how that's playing into that statistic, and not just the experience that's happening at the hospital.
Right.
I mean, you got to look at the bigger picture. And another thing that I didn't realize, because when I watched the first part of that film, and I had to turn it off because it was so one-sided. It was so one-sided, it was unwatchable for me. It actually ticked me off. It ticked me off that they were demonizing these nurses and these doctors. It ticked me off because of the experience that I had with Heather.
Mm-hmm.
It made me mad. I had to turn it off. But what I didn't realize is that the statistic that they were leveraging was not just a statistic that was measuring the number of infants that died during childbirth. It was the number of infant deaths over the course of their infancy. And I don't know what age that would go up to.
I think it's 12 months.
12 months. So that's what that was measuring. So that's accounting for all sorts of freak accidents, all sorts of irresponsible things done by parents, all sorts of sicknesses and all this stuff that could happen within the first year of a child's life.
Right.
But they painted it to be, no, this statistic is showing you how many children are dying actually when they're being delivered.
Right.
Isn't it crazy how you can take stats and just paint a picture around them to produce whatever outcome or whatever narrative you want to produce?
That's why I typically don't even use statistics much when I'm talking with a patient, because number one, it can change. Number one, my brain's full and I can't remember numbers anymore. I already have enough numbers in here. I can't remember anymore. And like you said, they can just be skewed. You can say a number and people are like, oh, that number's too high for me. Or somebody else might be like, oh, that's fine. So yeah, I think it's just having discussion, not just this is the statistic. Like, let's talk about why, how, what could happen, and then go from there.
Yeah. I want to ask you too, Sonny, for future moms and dads out there, what is some of your favorite wisdom to offer to future moms, pregnant women, and in order to prepare them or set them up for success for what they're about to endure?
Well, I personally feel like that you need the Lord, because raising a child is the hardest thing I've ever done, but the most rewarding thing I've ever done as a mother. But at the same time, I also think that's the first time God ever showed me that I wasn't in control. And I think that's a big thing. You have to lean more on him because things change, you know. But you finally figured out, you're like, okay, 3 months, I've got this. This baby's doing this. Tomorrow, something's going to change. We're going to start crawling. We're going to start sitting up. We're going to start walking. And you think, I can't wait to hear them talk. And then when they start talking, you're like, you know what? Could you be quiet for like 2 minutes? I think it's just being flexible, and kind of going more with the flow. And not every child's the same. So I didn't know that necessarily because my kids are 10 years apart until I had my second. And I was like, I thought I had this. I've raised a kid for 10 years. I'm good. And then it was a wild ride. So and also get help, you know, ask for help. If you have family, friends that are willing to help, they actually want to help. They want to feel like they've done something. So if they want to come visit you, let them come. And then if they say, can I do the dishes? Let them, you know. I thought I needed to do it all on my own, and it was kind of silly. So I think just using your resources and understand that the medical community is not out to get you. We want you to be healthy and your baby to be healthy. But finding a good provider that you can just talk things through with too, pre-delivery is a really good thing because you can talk about some of your fears and kind of, this is what's going to happen. This is how it typically goes. Let's discuss it.
And during pregnancy, leading up specifically to the labor, there were a lot of questions for us. That one of the main ones that we struggled with is like exercise. We love to exercise. My wife loves to exercise. What's your opinion on that, or what's your experience with that for moms?
So if you're used to exercising, definitely stay active. Couple of things you want to avoid is squatting anything more than your body weight, because you got to think a squat puts so much pressure on your pelvis, and you already have a lot of pressure on your pelvis with a baby in there. So you don't want to like squat, you know, weights or anything like that. You can do just squats, your own body weight, and then anything that's gonna like jar you a lot. Now our bodies are amazing. Our pelvis like kind of cradles that baby and takes care of it for the most part. If you're used to riding a horse all the time, you know, you might continue it. Just be cautious. If you've got a wild horse or, you know, one that you're trying to break, probably let somebody else get on it. If you're pregnant, just because you don't want to have a blow to your abdomen. But as far as just exercise in general, keep doing it. You don't want to. It actually helps labor. It helps improve labor because your abdominal muscles do a lot of the work in labor. So the other thing is, once you get a little bit further along, like 20 weeks plus, you don't want to do anything where you're laying flat on your back, because the uterus puts pressure on the aorta and it can kind of make you feel kind of woozy, and then it can cut off a little bit of blood flow to baby. So you want to kind of avoid that.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, we got a lot of conflicting advice on that, and it was a decision that we had to make. That Brooke had to make just for herself. Like, no, this is really important to my mental health that I continue exercising, and she did. And you know, I'm really thankful that she did, because when I got to see her labor, I realized why it's called labor, and I thought, how do women do this that have like don't get up, don't walk, don't run, don't at least, you know, do daily things to take care of themselves and stay in, you know, in reasonable shape? Because it became evident to me that a woman, if we didn't have the ability to do a C-section, a woman could become so exhausted in labor that both her and the baby could die. It seemed like they could become so exhausted that they would no longer have the tenacity or the physical endurance to continue to push that baby out, man.
So typically, if that was the case, the baby wouldn't survive. Mom probably still would.
Okay.
But she would just, you know, pass out for a while. But still, yes. I mean, it's labor. It's work.
It was
It's not like the baby story, where it's 30 minutes from when you get pregnant to having a baby. It's not that. I kind of wish it was, but it's not.
No, I realized why they named it. Whoever named it labor, because it was some legit work.
Mm-hmm.
And can I ask you a question that I've been struggling with? Not and this question would be just I'm asking you just as an experienced mother, not necessarily as a medical professional. Something that I'm really struggling with. You don't have to answer this, but is in looking for now finding a long-term provider or pediatrician for my son. And again, I know this isn't your specific lane, but just as an experienced mother, one of the biggest parts of the conversation right now is vaccines. And I'm afraid of them. But at the same time, I was afraid of what our experience was going to be at the hospital. But this is something that I personally am struggling with right now, and it's a big part of the conversation. And it's actually, I'm realizing, if you do not choose to stick with the recommended schedule, it is going to be difficult to find a healthcare provider for my son. Yes. So do you mind sharing with me, just as a mom, like, what's your perspective on that?
So it's changed through the years. When I had my daughter, I was 24. I was a nurse, but it was just kind of like, this is what you do. You give the vaccines. There was no thought into it. And then 10 years later with my son, I put a lot more thought into it. I do think some vaccines have prevented really bad diseases from, and they've eradicated them totally, like measles, mumps, here in the United States. And some of those are coming back a little bit, I think, because so many are not being vaccinated. With my son, I spaced them out. I did not like the idea of having 3 or 4 at one time on a 12-pound baby. Excuse me, a 12-pound baby at the time. What if we have a reaction? How am I going to know which one it was? So we spaced those out. Things that are like optional, I opt out of. But I don't know. I understand anyone's perspective on it. I understand total non-vax, and then I understand just going with the flow, and then I understand let's modify it a little bit. Let's research it. Is there a better option than I don't know the right answer to that. Mm-hmm. But I will say it is very hard here in Rome to find someone that will accept your child if they're not vaccinated, which I don't agree with. At the same time, I see they're trying to protect their other patients, but I think that there's a need for some providers that will. I don't have a solution for that, but I do think that's something that is coming.
I think you and I are a lot alike on that conversation then, because as I think about this, I'm the same way. First of all, I have every vaccination in the book. Like, I probably have vaccinations that the doctors here in Rome have never even heard of, because I've been to places like Lagos, Nigeria, where every third person you see is rolling around on a skateboard because they have polio and they're crippled. Yeah. And because there are ancient diseases and viruses and stuff over there that nobody in the United States have heard about, mm-hmm. in a long, long time, and they're still thriving in those places. Right. And so being in the military, man, they ran me through an assembly line like multiple times, and I'm fine. And at least by most measures, I'm fine. I know I'm a little bit weird and stuff sometimes, and this and that, but I see like the good for humanity as a whole. I see the good that vaccines have, the good impact they've made on humanity. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, man, over here, there's an old backcountry road where I live, and there's an old cemetery, and I love to go visit that old cemetery. 3 out of 4 gravestones in there are young children. And it's because these children were contracting these diseases and dying from these diseases or dying in childbirth, but most of them were a year or two old when their immune system wasn't able to combat some of these sicknesses, and they got them. And it's like, so I get the benefit of them. But at the same time, at least from the research that I'm doing, that's kind of where I'm landing too, is spacing them out. Mm-hmm. Seems like it makes the most sense. And I'm listening to not opinions of some random mom out there. Like I'm listening to the opinions of vaccinologists and medical doctors and pediatricians. And that seems like where they're landing too. Like, no, vaccines aren't terrible. But like, I looked at the schedule, and if I followed the schedule, my son would receive 26 vaccines in the first 6 months of his life. 26 shots in the first 6 months. And I'm like, and these are being given in doses of 4, 5, 6 vaccines in one single visit. And I just don't know that I can. There's something in me that says that's not a good idea.
Right.
I'm not a medical professional, but there's just some intuition in me that seems like that's just not a good idea. But at the same time, it's frustrating that I can't choose from the best pediatricians in my town to care for my son, because these pediatricians, the ones that everyone recommends, I cannot utilize their service if I make the decision to space these things out. And so it leaves me in this kind of pickle, and I'm really struggling with it.
Have you checked? I wasn't aware that they wouldn't allow you if you were still getting them but delaying them. But I could be wrong.
Well, we're going to shop around, I guess you could say, and maybe find someone who will. I just want to be able to work with someone on a more common sense, like ground level. And like, I want to be informed before I give consent. But some of the appointments I've been to, I haven't felt like the medical professional was interested in informing me in order for me. And that was a great thing. You were talking about the IV, you wanting access to the IV when you're with a mother in labor. And it's like, you're making the extra effort to go in and explain to them, inform them why you are so adamant about this decision, in depth, answer their questions, and make them feel comfortable and understand why you are so adamant about this particular thing. And then at that point, they are then able to make an informed decision, yes or no. Right. And I haven't felt that with the vaccine thing.
Well, in whoever you've seen's defense, sometimes our schedules are crazy. Like, I would love to sit down with every patient I see and educate on whatever issues you have at the moment. Sometimes our schedules, we can't do that. And that's the part that frustrates me the most. Is I love to educate and just talk, and I just like to talk, I guess, but I do like to educate too. But sometimes they don't have that opportunity because they have more patients, which I feel like is something that needs to be addressed on a corporate standpoint. But I don't know. I've spoke my piece about that and nothing's happened. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think, again, that is even that's a complex issue too. You talk about it being addressed on a corporate standpoint, but I think there's an angle there. But I think there's also the other angle on that is part of the responsibility is on the populace. Like, if we had a healthier population, you guys as medical professionals wouldn't be so constantly overwhelmed, and maybe it would be easier to manage, because there's only a limit. You guys are a limited resource. People like you who have dedicated your lives to this profession and who are willing to go and endure the schooling, to pay the cost that it takes to do that, that's a huge sacrifice. I mean, medical professionals, doctors, surgeons, midwives, you guys are all a limited resource. Society can't just pump you guys out to keep up with the growing demand of an unhealthy population. It's an impossibility. There's a finite number of human beings that God created with the passion and the courage to do the job you do. So it's super complex, man.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. From our standpoint, I mean, people are still going to have babies, whether they're healthy or not. So that's not quite as much of an issue, but it's just the number that we are expected to see in a day. It's kind of, it's a little high. It's a little high from what I feel like I mentally can do, and to make every patient feel and get what they need. So
yeah. I got a little window into that with our experience. I know you ended up having to call the doc in for my wife to help out, and he had literally just came from no telling what he was dealing with. He had to step out of there and directly into what we were facing in our room together. And I remember looking at this dude and being like, there's no telling whatever he was doing over there, that kid may not have made it. Like I don't know what happened, but he might have just stepped out of a really traumatic situation and he didn't even have a break, man. He had to step right into this room and now handle this emergency, like right off the bat. That's intense. That is intense.
I love my doctors. I definitely could not do what I do without them. Sometimes just knowing that they're there. I may not need them. When I do need them, I'm very fortunate that they're there. But just knowing they're there is just a relief. So that's we work really well as a team.
Yeah, and it's hard work too. It's hard work. Well, is there anything else we need to cover, Sonny? Anything else that's on your heart that you want to share about what you do, what you and your peers do, what people need to know about?
Yeah. I mean, just know that the majority of the providers that are in the medical community versus quote unquote the home birth community, and some overlap. Here in Georgia, there's not a ton of them, but there's also birth centers, which I think would be really cool to have here.
Is that like a middle ground?
Middle ground. So more home-like, but close to the hospital, close to services. A couple of, resources, equipment that you wouldn't have at home. So that would be awesome, but I don't see that coming for a while. Again, the cost, I think there's a lot of reimbursement from insurance companies is different with that. But that would be great. But just that we want what's best for you. And sometimes what's best for you is not what you wanted. When I had my daughter, I ended up having a C-section because I was induced early for preeclampsia. And I was in school for midwifery at the time, but they were rolling me to the operating room, and I was thinking, I didn't read that part of the book because I was not going to have a C-section. Absolutely 100%. I was not going to have a C-section. And then I ended up doing it. So my personal experience also opened my eyes to a lot that you're not in control. Your baby needs to be born now for your health and her health. And she's not coming out the other way. So we need to do this. So that was a big thing for me. But it's okay. If it doesn't go the way you want it, it's also okay. I think for women, we put so much guilt on ourselves. I felt guilty for years that I had a C-section. I wasn't a real mom because I had a C-section. And that's just not true,
Wow.
And I think, we all have some birth trauma. even if your delivery went very smoothly and, by the book, you would say, we all have some birth trauma, 'cause especially that first one. Like, you have no idea. You have no idea what you're getting into, or maybe your birth's beautiful, but you have a terrible first year because your kid cries all night every night. We all go through it. Just try to have some grace with yourself, and of course with the baby, because they're learning too. So
my wife has said many times that the guilt monster is strong.
It is. I have learned to let it go after 18 years, but it took a while. It took a lot of praying, a lot of searching, and just experience, and through the years and things happening. So, yeah. But we are not responsible for our children's happiness. We just have to take care of them.
That's good wisdom, man. I know you talked about a organization that you, I guess, have been involved with up in the place, the area where you live. Can you share that with the listeners?
So it's called Flourish Clothes Closet. It's a friend of mine. Her and her husband adopted 2 children through foster care. And she realized in that process that a lot of foster children come into foster care with nothing, with the clothes on their back. So she started a nonprofit. It's called Flourish. And basically, she takes donations of clothes when they have a foster family that reaches out to her. They come in, either they can shop for the clothes, or she can put together some clothes, some toys at Christmas. We try to do some different toys and things, but it's just a really good resource. Sometimes some baby beds or pack and plays, because if you're a foster parent, you may just, get the call one night and you not quite be prepared. So definitely reach out to that, anybody that's listening, and they take donations. I think in 2 weeks, second week in June, they're going to have like a community type yard sale with like a barbecue fundraiser. And that's in Summerville, Georgia. But yeah, it's a great organization.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we'll attach a link to their website and wherever listeners, if they feel called to donate to that mission, in the description of this episode. Man, Sonny, I just really, truly am thankful for who you are and the work that you do, and specifically the work that I got to see you do for my family, because you were a huge part in changing the course of my life. And I know it was God working through you, but your ability to do what you do, to make split-second decisions, to walk a fine line, to react in the midst of chaos, is truly magnificent. I hope you know that.
I appreciate that. I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot.
And I'm super thankful to be able to have this conversation with you and just share a little bit of your knowledge and who you are with the audience here. So I want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. Keep sharing your message. I love the fact that you are grounded in common sense and not caught up in the extremes on either end of the spectrum. I think we all need a little bit more of those voices in our lives. I'll speak for myself.
Yeah. Well, the extremes are where it gets scary, and things can happen on the extremes, but I've learned to let go. So I'm a type A personality, still that way, very bossy, but I have changed a ton since having my daughter, my 18-year-old. So you're in for a ride. It's going to continue to change your life.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. If Sonny decides to create a social media account, we'll attach that in the show notes of this episode, and you guys can reach out to her and ask her about the conversation that we had, or if you have any other questions for her, or you just want to thank her for coming on. I don't know for sure that she'll do that or not, but I know she has a voice in her life that is encouraging her to do so. So we'll see. We love you guys so much. Hope you got something out of this conversation. And thank you for allowing us both to share our stories with you guys. It is a great honor. And our hope is that it would be to your benefit in some way, shape, or form. I love you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me on here. I enjoyed it. A little nervous, but I enjoyed it. So, yeah.
First podcast,
and just realizing, not everyone sees what we do, and I appreciate you seeing that. I wouldn't change it if nobody recognized me. That's fine, but I just sometimes it's nice to be noticed.
It needs to be talked about. That's why this conversation was important. It needs to be talked about because it's not talked about. And I know it's not talked about because, again, I never heard anything other than the extremes. So it's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you again.
Thank you, Sonny. We love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Lord willing, we'll see you next week. Enough said.